He can't hold back. And that night changed everything, a real infidelity story. I used to believe love was built on small, ordinary moments. The kind where you wake up next to someone and the world feels steady, familiar, safe. For nearly 7 years, that was my world with Emma. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Quiet breakfasts, lazy Sundays, and laughter echoing in our tiny apartment. She was a schoolteacher. I managed a design firm. Life moved in rhythm, unremarkable yet comforting. Until the rhythm changed. It began subtly, the way distant thunder hums before the rain. Emma started working late, claiming school projects and parent meetings. She'd come home smelling faintly of someone else's cologne. Not perfume, not soap, but a scent I couldn't place. When I asked, she smiled too quickly, the kind of smile that ends before it reaches the eyes. I told myself I was imagining things. That marriage was about trust, not suspicion. But the silence between us began to grow teeth, sharp, unspoken, and relentless. Conversations became transactional. Did you eat? Don't forget to lock the door. Good night. Simple words, stripped of meaning. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The living room light was on. Emma was sitting on the couch, her phone pressed tightly in her hand. She didn't notice me at first. Her expression was soft, almost tender, the kind I hadn't seen in months. She was whispering something, a tone meant for someone who wasn't me. When she looked up and saw me standing there, her face drained of color. "Oh, hey, you're home early," she stammered, tucking her phone under a cushion. I smiled, pretending not to notice. "Yeah, meeting got canceled." She busied herself in the kitchen, her movements too precise, like she was performing normalcy. I watched her, my chest tight, my thoughts circling like vultures around a single truth I didn't want to name. That night, as she slept beside me, her back turned, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The silence felt heavier than her absence ever could. It wasn't just doubt anymore. It was the slow erosion of something sacred. The next morning, she kissed my cheek before leaving for work. Her touch lingered, deliberate, almost apologetic. I wanted to ask what she wasn't saying, but the words caught in my throat. Sometimes, it's easier to live inside the illusion than confront what's unraveling in front of you. Still, something in her eyes that morning told me everything I needed to know but wasn't ready to believe. And that was the moment, the quiet, deceptive calm before everything changed. Days slipped by, yet the unease clung to me like damp air before a storm. I tried to shake it off, to drown myself in work, in noise, in anything that made me forget the quiet distance that had taken root between Emma and me. But even the smallest things betrayed her absence. Her laughter no longer filled the kitchen, her texts grew shorter, her eyes avoided mine. One Friday, I suggested dinner at her favorite Italian place, the one where she used to steal bites of my pasta and pretend she didn't like it. She hesitated, glanced at her phone, and said softly, "Maybe another time, Mark. I'm really tired." Her tone was polite, practiced, the way you'd speak to a stranger at a bus stop. That night, I found her purse on the counter. Her phone buzzed inside, once, twice. I shouldn't have looked, but temptation isn't loud, it whispers. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Nathan. A single message read, "Same time tomorrow?" My breath caught. I wanted to believe it was nothing, a coworker, a friend, an innocent exchange. But deep down, the lie no longer fit. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I stood by the window long after she'd gone to bed, watching the reflection of my own doubt flicker in the glass. The next day, I left work early, a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. I drove to her school but found her car missing. My heart pounded as I followed a direction I couldn't explain. Instinct? Maybe. 20 minutes later, I parked near a quiet cafe tucked behind a row of old brick buildings. Through the window I saw her. Emma was there, laughing, leaning across the table toward a man whose face I didn't know but already hated. His hand brushed hers, casual, intimate, practiced. My stomach twisted, my pulse roared in my ears. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It wasn't anger that struck me first, it was grief. The kind that steals sound and replaces it with silence. She looked happy. Happier than she'd been with me in months. I turned away before she saw me, before I could crumble completely. The steering wheel trembled under my hands as I drove aimlessly, the city blurring past. Every streetlight, every reflection felt like an accusation. When I finally got home, I sat in the dark. The house smelled like her perfume, warm, floral, familiar. 1,000 memories pressed against me, uninvited. I realized, then, that betrayal isn't just the act. It's the moment you recognize the person you love has become someone you no longer know. I didn't confront her that night. Not yet. Because the part of me that still loved her needed one more chance to be wrong. I spent the next few days drifting through life like a ghost in my own home. Emma carried on as if nothing had changed, smiling when necessary, asking about my day, pretending the air between us wasn't thick with everything unsaid. But I saw it now, the careful pauses before she answered, the quick glance at her phone she thought I didn't notice. By Friday, something inside me had settled, not into calm, but into certainty. There's a strange peace that comes with knowing the truth, even when it breaks you. That evening, I told her I had to work late. She nodded absently, her eyes flicking toward the clock. I parked near that same cafe again, my heart pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat. Rain had started to fall, blurring the glow of streetlights. I watched from the car as she appeared under her umbrella, scanning the crowd before slipping inside. Moments later, the man, Nathan, joined her. They greeted each other not like lovers caught in danger, but like two people who believed the world had already forgiven them. Something in me snapped then, not with rage, but with resolve. I stepped out of the car and walked into the cafe. The bell above the door chimed softly, almost politely, as if to announce the end of something sacred. Emma looked up and froze. For a long second, none of us spoke. Nathan's expression flickered between guilt and defiance, while Emma's face crumbled under the weight of realization. "Mark," she whispered, her voice small, broken. I stood there, drenched, trembling, my mind a blur of disbelief and painful clarity. "You don't have to explain," I said quietly. "I already know." The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to swallow. She rose slowly, her hands shaking. "It's not what you think," she said, though even she couldn't believe it. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move closer. I couldn't. The distance between us wasn't measured in steps anymore. It was measured in years of fading honesty. Nathan looked away, guilt twisting his face. I almost pitied him. Almost. "You could have just told me," I said. My voice cracked, not with anger, but exhaustion. "You owed me that much." Her tears spilled then, silent, endless. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. I nodded slowly. That's what everyone says when they choose themselves over someone who loved them. And just like that, the world tilted. The noise of the cafe returned. Cups clinking, laughter from distant tables. Life moving on around us while ours fell apart. I turned and walked out, the bell chiming again behind me. The rain felt colder now, sharper, like the night itself wanted to wash me clean of her. But some things don't rinse away, they stay, carved into the quiet places of the soul. That night didn't just end our marriage. It ended the version of myself that believed love was unbreakable. I didn't remember driving home that night. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and gray, and by the time I reached our apartment, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The silence inside felt heavier than ever, not the calm kind, but the kind that hums with everything you don't want to feel. Emma came home hours later. I heard her keys tremble against the lock, a sound I used to find comforting. She stood in the doorway, her eyes red, her hair damp from the rain. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Words felt pointless, too fragile for the wreckage between us. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Mark." I wanted to yell, to demand reasons, to ask how long she'd been slipping away from me. But all that came out was a quiet, exhausted, "Why?" Her lips trembled. I don't know. Maybe I felt invisible. Maybe I wanted to feel something new. It wasn't about him, it was about me. The honesty hurt more than the betrayal itself. Because she was right, the distance hadn't started with him. It started the moment we stopped reaching for each other, the moment love became routine instead of connection. I sat on the edge of the couch, my hands clasped tightly. "You could have told me," I said. She nodded, tears falling again. "I was afraid you'd stop loving me." I looked at her then, really looked. The woman standing before me wasn't the same one I married. Maybe she never had been. Or maybe life had changed her, and I was too blind to notice. We talked until dawn, not about forgiveness, but about truth. There was no shouting, no accusations left to throw. Just two people sitting in the ashes of what used to be a life. She told me she would leave at least for a while. I didn't stop her. There are goodbyes that happen without words, and this was one of them. When the door finally closed behind her, I sat in the stillness, listening to the faint hum of the city waking up. The world kept moving, indifferent, constant, as if our heartbreak was just another passing storm. Days turned into weeks. The bed felt too large. The mornings too quiet. Yet, somewhere in that emptiness, I began to rediscover myself, the version of me that existed before the promises, before the pain. I learned that grief doesn't just destroy, it rebuilds too, in quieter, slower ways. Sometimes I still catch the scent of her perfume in old clothes. It no longer hurts the way it used to. It just reminds me that love, even when it ends, leaves traces that time can't quite erase. Maybe that's what it means to heal, not to forget, but to remember without breaking. That night changed everything. But maybe in losing her, I finally found what I had been missing all along, myself. A year has passed since that night, but time has a strange way of folding in on itself. Some days, it feels like a lifetime ago. On others, it's as if I'm still standing in that rain-soaked street, watching everything I knew collapse in silence. Emma and I haven't spoken since the divorce papers were signed. No dramatic final words, no letters, no attempts at closure, just an unspoken agreement that our story had run its course. Yet, in quiet moments, her absence still hums through the corners of my life like a faint melody I can't quite forget. I moved to a smaller apartment by the river. It's nothing special, creaky floors, narrow hallways, but it's mine. I painted the walls a warm gray and filled the shelves with books I never had time to read. The mornings are different now, slower, quieter, honest. I brew coffee for one, open the windows, and let the cold air fill the room. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm performing someone else's version of happiness. Sometimes I walk by the cafe, the one where I last saw her. It doesn't hurt the same way anymore. The pain has softened, reshaped itself into understanding. I used to think betrayal was the end of love, but maybe it's just its final lesson, that real love demands truth, and truth doesn't always survive comfort. I've started to paint again. It's something I abandoned years ago when work and life became too loud. Now, every stroke feels like reclaiming a part of me I'd buried under years of compromise. And in that rediscovery, I've learned something unexpected. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, it's about freeing yourself from it. I don't hate Emma. I can't. Love doesn't simply vanish. It transforms, loses its shape, and settles into something quieter, a memory that still aches but no longer defines you. I think she loved me once in her own way. Maybe that's enough. The night she betrayed me used to play in my mind like a wound that refused to close. But now it feels more like a doorway, painful, yes, but necessary. Because sometimes it takes losing what you thought was your forever to understand who you truly are without it. Every scar tells a story. Mine just happens to begin with love and end with freedom. And though I'll never forget the night that changed everything, I've stopped wishing it hadn't happened. Because now I see, that night didn't just break me. It remade me. Sometimes, life breaks you in ways you never see coming. Not with noise, but with silence, with a truth that arrives too late, and love that fades too soon. That night, I lost the woman I thought I'd grow old with. But maybe, just maybe, I found the version of myself I was meant to become. We all have a moment that changes everything, a night we wish we could rewrite. But healing isn't about erasing what happened, it's about learning to live beyond it. Because in the end, love doesn't always stay. But it always leaves something behind. A lesson, a scar, and the strength to begin again. For more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe our channel.